Good day to you. This is Anagalactic. It's about 5 a.m. in the morning here. This is a little bit unusual. I don't really have anything ready over here. But the reason I want to give this presentation at this strange hour is I've learned when I've had a dream. Mathematicians report this. This isn't, I don't think, superstition, although it would be subjective. Anybody can say anything about what they saw in a dream and just make it up. But I'm leveling with you here. I noticed that in the pre-dawn hours, if I wake up, I very often wake up at 4 a.m. or even earlier, sometimes with an urgency to get to the computer to get something down fast. For instance, when you dream and you want to benefit from your dreams, which you can do, all you have to do is leave a notebook and pen or notebook and pencil right by your bed. It's extremely short-term memory, although it varies enormously from individual to individual. My sister, for instance, my youngest sister, can remember dreams forever, and she says they're overwhelming sometimes, and she sees them in color, in like Technicolor. And I'm like, wow, this is my sister, okay? Now, I don't remember dreams at all, but I did find out about this practice, which you can do. As soon as you wake up, you can remember the dream, although it's unpredictable, right? At least it is for me. But if you write it down, you can then study your notes over a period of days, and you get better at it. It actually produces a feedback system. And it is homeopathic and self-therapeutic if you know what to look for, which is quite an art, and I'm not saying I really know much about it. I do remember, though, that I learned something that I really wanted to know about. Something behavioristic. I don't even remember what it was. But today, what I want to do is, as quickly as I can, as concisely and coherently as I can, give you the definition of quantum gravity. Now, those of you who have been following my 900 videos, I'm not sure anybody's seen all 900, but about a week ago I passed the 900 video mark, and that's in under 3 years. This June will mark the 3-year anniversary of all I wanted to do was just reveal the geometry that I discovered. But I had a suspicion that I should document the discovery for more than one reason. In other words, not just write it down, but start producing videos on YouTube. It was because I strongly suspected that the insights I was getting into physics from this new geometry were neither random, nor were they in any danger of ending. In other words, I really did get the answer. Now, and what I'm saying to my viewership here, whoever you are, if you're unacquainted with my ways, I'm just going to sound really pompous, pretentious, and precocious, for the simple reason of comparison with professional physicists and mathematicians, whom you would expect would have far more insight than a layman such as myself. But God is great, my friend, and I actually am well beyond caring what anyone thinks. This is self-fulfillment. I don't need science anymore. I'm beyond physics and mathematics because I know more than they know. But much more importantly, I know how to use the knowledge that we have. The physicists obviously don't. There's an exception to that technology. Let me just give you a quickie here. Another example of my eccentricity. Technology is satanic. It's not inherently satanic. It's obvious that it was meant for human good. In other words, it is part of the design. But everything that's part of the design can be used for evil. If you don't know that, I don't know what you know. But technology currently is completely aggrandized for evil. There's always a footnote because there's always a a chi balance. You know, you've seen that Tai Chi symbol. The two circles inside the circle, where one half of each of the inner circles is cut off so it makes an S. You want to look at some videos by Lori Gardi, Lori, same way as my other sister spells her name. Lori Gardi, Gardi. That's just a heads up for you if you'd like to know something about what she calls the Ohm particle, OM. She's a top-notch physicist. I mean hands-on, she's a real one. But she also uses her mind. Most physicists stopped using their minds at university level. And you're not going to find any professional physicists who know anything that you want or need to know. But Lori does know some stuff. And I'm going to be writing to her soon. I think she's going to be the first of all the professionals that I've contacted cursorily just to test the waters. Alexandra Winsecker, Kurtjai Mungle, the great interviewer, and Ken Wheeler, the magnetist. He certainly is a magnetist in every sense. What we want to talk about today, that is what I'd like to present to you in a way that I don't. This is very informal. Obviously, I don't have any diagrams, and I don't really have anything prepared. This is coming straight from my subconscious, you could put it that way. So what is quantum gravity? Well, let's talk about both sides of the issue. You have certainly heard the term, but in order to gear your mind toward what I'm about to say, I just want to give you a little quiz. A quiz is something that's not meant to test you. A quiz to which you always give the answer is to get you on the right track. So it is at the discretion of the presenter if he feels it's a good idea to use that technique. But I'm not sure how extensively I am using it to its fullest capacity, but I just want to ask you a very simple quiz question. What do you think quantum gravity would be if it were discovered? Now, it hasn't been discovered. So let's start there with the standard model of particle physics, as I've taught in several presentations, but one by that name, SMPP. That's the abbreviation I use. But it's the standard model of particle physics is a title of one of my videos where I just basically take a big blower and just blow the fucking dresses off of these stupid ass physicists. So you can tell there's a lot of emotion involved here, and I shouldn't do that, but that's coming from my subconscious as well. So what do you think quantum gravity would be? Well, the standard model particle physicists say, first of all, they give it a name because, you know, they've given a name to the electron. They say it's a fermion. And they've given a name to the proton, which is a hadron baryon. And who gives a fuck if I get these terms mixed up in any way? Because their whole model is shit. And they know it. But the thing is they get trillions of dollars from the United States government to pursue this model in order to get a weapon. Of course, that's what governments always want, is a weapon. So they don't care whom they hurt. Governments have no conscience. And the standard model of particle physics is based on the cyclotron experiments. That is, the hadron colliders are cyclotrons. And the reason for performing these experiments is it's only for one reason: to get inside the proton to unlock the strong force. All right, we'll be covering that today. That's really quite an interesting term, the strong force. They don't know what it is. And yet, a man named Gelman, G-E-L-M-A-N, is how he should spell it. But he's from Europe. I think you can guess which part of Europe. Gelman spells his name in a stupid way. And I looked up to see why he spells his name in that ridiculous fashion. with a dash in it and two L's, and it's Gelman, Gelman. It's a very old name, and it's always spelled that way until Gelman decided to change the spelling. Well, I gotta say this. Gelman is one of the few subatomic particle physicists who actually figured out something of value. So I will give you the upside of the Standard Model, which is that the proton now has a mathematical formulation that did not exist until Gelman figured it out. And what he figured out is so simple that I'm certain that he's right. It's just that even Gelman doesn't know what it means. This does have to do with a quark system. That's essentially what he discovered, but what does that mean? It's a simple harmonic is what it's called. It's the proportion of 2 to 1. The simplest harmonic in the universe is the proportion 2 to 1. And that's what the quark system is. It's a 2-1 proportional system at the fundamental level. It doesn't get any more fundamental than that. But he doesn't know what it means. He never called it a harmonic. None of the physicists know what they're looking at. But this is the best that they came up with. I think it's worth the whole $1 trillion that could have been used to help people or do something for humans. No, governments don't think of humans ever. Governments are anti-human. It's satanic. But, you know, that's religion. I don't want to confuse you. Jesus Christ, I don't want to confuse you. It's all right if you think I'm nuts. A lot more people are going to think I'm nuts shortly. That's really what you want. Yeshua was nuts, wasn't he? Sure he was, certifiable. I follow my master. I don't care about you. That's actually quite a bit of power comes from training yourself not to care what people think. Now, that can backfire too. You have to be perfectly moral. Well, who is? Only Yeshua was. That's a fact. But we're supposed to be like Yeshua, perfectly moral. And then you can cease caring what anybody thinks or feels about you. And then you'll have to defend yourself. I can't wait to get at these bastards' necks. Okay, so the two things you need to know about the Standard Model of particle physics. There's just two facts you need to know. One of them is what I just told you. The discovery of the quark structure that defines the proton. And it does. And I figured out why it does. It was a missing piece in my theory, and now I know everything. It's always a dangerous thing to say, because you know I don't mean that. Know everything? Oh, well, how come I don't just levitate away? I might just do that one of these days. I don't know. I'm not sure yet. So that's the good side of the Hadron Collider shit. It's all shit except for that. That is critically important. But the pion, the muon, all of that is garbage. The positron, that also is garbage. Although I'm not going to go into that now. I'll give a separate presentation on the particle soup. If you know what you're looking for in the particle soup, I believe that's a gold mine. It's just these mathematicians are absolutely retarded when it comes to reality. It's because of the government breeding program. The only evolution that takes place on Earth is in the American schools. You could extend that to science in general, but this would be the commandeering of the educational system by pure evil, Satan. Again, I'm not saying it's the devil with horns and red pajamas. But Satan refers to the group mind of men when they get together. It's exactly the definition of Satan. That's called a government. And the government runs the schools. Did you notice that? You're not allowed not to send your children to those prisons where they teach the children that they're from monkeys. There's no such thing as God. The universe is expanding. I think that's my new favorite. I just heard another video, because I wanted to listen to what this guy said about something that was discovered in deep space by the James Webb Telescope. But all of these guys, they never fail. They start out by just reminding you, since the universe is expanding, and the same thing comes up in other contexts in scientific philosophy, which is rampant now, and that's not bad in itself, but you're from amoebas. Really, what the Anglican Church first said when it heard about Darwinism in England, when it was first published, it was really Russell's paper. And Darwin, he didn't steal it, though. But he did know that Russell had beaten him to the punch. Very similar to the Leibniz-Newton thing. So Darwin, really, he deserves the credit, though, because Russell didn't write a book about it. Although he did later. And you can study all that in Tom Wolfe's last book called The Kingdom of Speech. It's about the Darwinian hoax. Unbelievable shit. Pure Satanism. And so Darwinism became famous because it overthrew the Anglican Church. But what the Anglican Church said about Darwinism, so-called, is that it means that we're all from monkeys. And therefore, if it had been 200 years earlier, they would have dragged Darwin down to the center of London and hung him by the neck or burned him at the stake. That is no exaggeration. But since it was the middle of the 19th century and there was a definite change coming about. All right, so that is a comparison. I just made a comparison between Darwinian biological evolution by natural selection. God, I hope I said it right, even though it's completely absurd. So in the standard model of particle physics, their axiomatic basis. Remember, these are all government-paid technologists, and every last one of them is a mathematician. So there's no way that they're actually going to be able to make progress, except perhaps toward the government goal, which is to get a weapon. It certainly isn't to help humanity in any way or further science at all. That is not the purpose of the Hadron Colliders. They're international, you could say international. Israel's in on it. Oh yeah. Well, Israel would be in on it anyway because the United States is in on it. And Israel is simply the 51st state, I guess you could say. Except now it's actually Washington, D.C. itself. All the orders that go forward to get American slaves to produce more for the Israelis, it comes from Jerusalem. So, we don't want to go there. That's another aspect of the satanic mind. I mean, what kind of... they get their country back, and so now they're committing genocide. That's Satan. Okay, it's plain and simple. United States funds Israel. United States is satanic. If you think that sounds superstitious, it's because you're retarded. And I'll tell you why you're retarded so I can help you with it. It's because you were traumatized in your youth by religion. And so was Darwin. Darwin was deathly afraid of the Anglicans. All right, you don't need to be deathly afraid of the standard model particle physicists. And I'll tell you why. Their axiomatic basis, if you were to go to study to see what the hell are these idiots even saying about the shit that flies out from this crash? What do they actually say? Well, they've developed this model. It has a really highfalutin name now, the Eightfold Path. Well, that's Satan for you. Just steal anything he can and use it for his own purpose. The Eightfold Path. Don't make me laugh until I shit on you. All right. What do they say? Everything in the universe is a particle. So you don't have to listen to anything they say, because they're out of their fucking minds. It's actually quite different than that. And none of the things they've identified is actually a particle. And I leave it up to you to name what they are then. Because you can see things flying through the bubble chamber. They spiral and sometimes they divide. You get Feynman to explain. Well, what they're looking at is a completely shredded universe. And they'll never put it together. But you see, there's always a footnote to everything. And Gelman, really just one of the top government slaves, of course, I'll just say of European gypsy-like descent. The other thing that you want to know about subatomic particle physics that's rather important is they're missing a piece. Now, you may say, oh, no, it's the Higgs boson, they found it. There is no such thing as the Higgs boson, and no, they didn't find it. But that's not even important. That only they even remotely understand what they're talking about when they talk about bosons. They just made it all up. They actually just made it up to justify the numbers, the Feynman numbers, etc. But they're missing a piece. Do you know which one it is? It's the graviton. That's what they're looking for. Okay, how would you look for a graviton? Well, you can wonder and write in, just leave a comment, oh, this is how you'd find a graviton. They'll never find it because it doesn't exist. Hold on, though. What is meant by a graviton? It would be the fundamental unit. In this case, according to their model where everything is a particle, it would be a particle that's at the basis of gravity. They say that the photon is a force carrier particle. That is so backwards, it's really unbelievable that these men are allowed to exist. But they do exist under the umbrella of the United States government. All of their money comes from the government, from their youth to the present day, for any of them. They began at university. That's a government installation. So they're just paid by the government. That means they don't have to work. All they have to do is do mathematics. And the government is confident that with enough of these jackasses pooling their mathematical minds together, they'll get another atom bomb. They'll get another hydrogen bomb. They may even get a step bomb Sarbomba. But they want way more than that. They want the strong force, which if they do figure it out, which they won't, don't worry. But if they did, they would have to avoid getting to the experimental stage because that one will run away. If the strong force bomb can be conceived and detonated at any strength, that would be the end of human civilization, if not the entire solar system. Nobody's going to unlock the strong force. But we do want to know what it is. So, what does that have to do with a graviton? Well, the graviton is an undiscoverable particle. It's like that famous element, unobtainium. I had to laugh at that. I don't know, your sense of humor, but I had to share that. All right, so what would the graviton be? It would be the quantum of gravity. So quantum gravity is the search for the graviton. Is there any hope of finding it? I would say not, but for this reason. Let's say a magician is showing you a card trick. We'll call it 3-card Monte. It's probably not a real game. Well, actually it is, but this is something different. And this magician is so good, and there's people watching, but the magician shuffles the cards around, but very quickly slaps one of the cards onto the marks, the victim's forehead. And this magician is so good that the guy doesn't see it, or lady. So you just twitch, and now there are only 2 cards. And the person is baffled, but the card is sticking to their forehead. And now he says, which card would you like to choose? But there's only 2 cards there. And you're supposed to choose from among 3. Well, that's the Graviton. And the thing is, everyone wants to discover the Graviton. The magician is showing, this is how you discover the Graviton. I'm going to have this lady discover it for us. And the Graviton is sticking to her forehead, which means she can't see it. So I hope you see the metaphor. Let me explain the joke here. She may or may not have found funny. What does that have to do with the Graviton? Well, the Graviton has already been discovered. We've known about it for well over a century. There is such a particle as the Graviton. Can you guess what it's called? Of course, it's the proton. It's the only candidate for the Graviton. And it in fact is the quantum of gravity. How can I say quantum? Do you know how many different kinds of protons there are? I hope you do, but let me just make sure we're all on the same page here. There's only one. It's the most uniform anything in the universe. It's the basis of matter. It's actually a quantum of mass is how we weigh it. But when you're weighing it, how do you weigh a proton? Well, it's actually not difficult to weigh a proton. We know exactly how much a proton weighs. But I don't want to make this into a parlor game. I woke up early and realized I needed to do this to give you a direct insight which you're going to want, okay? So the proton is a primordial black hole. And a moment's thought will convince you of that. Because what is a proton? As you know from my prior lectures, or if you don't from my prior lectures, I'm telling you now. A proton is a dual force field. It has a surface that is the intersection of an in field and an out field. And for the proton, its position in space is generated by a centrifugal force field, on the other side of which it's centripetal with respect to the electron. So that's obvious. I'm sure that you understand that. If not, you shouldn't listen to me anymore. You're not listening. Okay, I know the difference between when I'm making sense and when I'm not. And if you're confused, it's because you want to be confused. And you need to go somewhere else and get some entertainment. Okay? Come back if you want. But I kowtow to nobody anymore. I'm not going to tie your shoelaces. So that's a proton. It's a force field. And it has a 1 femtometer radius. Exactly 1 femtometer. Exactly 1 femtometer. The way I define a femtometer. The only way to define a femtometer is the way I define it. And that is the Planck length. So the radius of a proton is 1 femtometer, having redefined that stupid metric term. All right? So now this is reality, not mathematics anymore. It's not arbitrary or random numberology. It's 1 femtometer. Maybe one day it'll be called the Scott. Or just 1 milleroni. I doubt it, and I wouldn't want that. All right. So the pressurization of the proton force field is due to the Gelman harmonic, which we'll get into in another video, because that would be the heart of everything, beyond which there is nothing further to find. The Gelman harmonic. Gelman does not know what he discovered. Well, neither did Planck, which is a story that requires some review. I may have actually passed on a traditional telling of the story of Max Planck's discovery in the history of quantum mechanics. I hate to repeat a rumor, but I think I might have. But it's the most popular rumor. That story may not be true about Planck having discovered the quantum in 1900. There's some serious flaws in that story having to do with timing and the role of Hendrik Lorentz. So to get to the point here, the proton is the quantum of gravity because it is a quantum, and it is in fact the only quantum in the universe. The proton is many things. It's a quantum of gravity, or I should say the quantum of gravity, because it's the smallest unit of gravitational force. And all protons are exactly the same. And they all have exactly the same Planck length radius. I discovered that, by the way. And beyond the pressurization field, naturally has to have an equal and opposite reciprocal force. And that's what draws the electron in from any direction. It's a spherical force field that is actually two force fields in balance. I discovered that because Roger showed me how to discover it. And you could say that Roger discovered it, and I do say that. But since he's dead and I'm alive, I discovered it. That's just the way it goes. Tough cookies. I get the Nobel Prize. But I won't go there. I've counted I should get 3 Nobel Prizes. Usually only get 1, but Madame Curie got 2. If I'm not mistaken, I believe Madame Curie got 2 Nobel Prizes. So you can come back and get it again. Well, I should get 3 then. And I'm dead serious on that. And if the time ever comes, I give it a less than 0% chance. But heaven is good. Heaven can create miracles. If I gave this lecture that I want to give at Madison Square Gardens, Albert Hall in Moscow, somewhere in Europe, I would end up getting 3 Nobel Prizes. I'll tell you what, no I wouldn't, because the Nobel Prize has been changed. The forces of evil are just perpetually and continuously at work. It's like trying to ward off cockroaches, lice, and ants when the whole apartment building is infested with those vermin. Yeah, evil is terrifyingly bad. But so is the search for quantum gravity. Since you're looking right at it, that is a proton, is the quantum of gravity. So I just told you how it's doing that. It creates a dual force field that creates a reciprocation in space, in spherical space. And it's a reciprocation, another one of my discoveries. It's not linear, it has nothing to do with charge. It's not plus minus. And all the stuff you hear about Steinmetz, Wheeler is big on this. Steinmetz and even Tesla, full of shit. All those guys are just maniacs. They're not to be worshipped. They're not to be respected. They're to be hated. I got the right answer. This is for humans, not for governments. Tesla was a government man. Of course Steinmetz was. All right, so enough of false hero worship. The proton is the only space particle because it affects space. And in fact, I don't want to get philosophical, but the relationship between space, what we just call empty space, and the proton is much more profound than you could ever guess. And I'm not sure how long it'll be before I can explain it to that depth, because then it gets really spooky. But this should be spooky enough. And you've heard of the black hole. Right, the black hole is extremely famous. Well, it's also extremely simple. The proton is a primordial black hole. The universe is filled with black holes. They're called protons. Why do you think they're bending space? It's because they're primordial black holes. Well, that raises a real paradox that goes all the way back to Newton and really before. because that's a force, no matter what the imbecile Dr. Sabina Hassenfelder says. She put herself up to this. She made a video, and a lot of other men have done this, where she just says, just as if she's telling you the birds and bees, it says, gravity is not a force, and she said it at least 20 times in 20 minutes. Gravity is not a force. When you hear anyone, even a woman of such repute as Hassenfelder, speaking with that kind of vehemence, you be on your fucking guard. Of course it's a force. You stupid. All right. Oh, I'm kicking shins. I'm kicking indoors. I must be heard. And if that means I have to adopt some misbehavior to get attention, you count on it. So, since the proton bends space with a space force, there must be an equal and opposite force somewhere. Gee, I wonder where that could be. It's the electron. All right. And now you see. Now, I could give a 5 or 6 hour lecture just on that. But if you're smart, or if you're a man and you know how to at least try to engage your mind, because you trust me, you're willing to think about what I just said. But I have already proved it. And so you had better understand it. Because if you listen to someone speaking the way I am about the actual truth, and you don't get it, that doesn't leave you neutral. That leaves you in debt. And eventually you'll pay for not having listened to me. Okay? So it is a black hole. And the scientific definition of a black hole is wrong. I have it right. So a proton is a primordial black hole. But let me teach you a word that is more accurate than that, because those are stupid words to use for the phenomenon. It's called a sink. That's an electrical engineering term. It's a sink. So it's pulling space in. This would be the definition of the proton. Pulls it in to a center. Okay, that's ridiculous. Where does it go after the center? Does it turn inside out? Yeah, it does. Only not into some alternate universe. It's a harmonic vibration in pure space. So now I know that you understood that. So a black hole does not swallow light, okay? It's insane to say something like that. Well, they are all out of their minds. All of your astrophysicists are certifiable. They're absolutely gone from reality. And if you listen to those fuckers, your astrophysicist like Neil deGrasse Tyson, he will poison your mind. Just by listening to that bastard, he's an extremely mean man. But if you like the Mr. Rogers version of that goddamn maniacal drill sergeant, listen to Brian Greene. Oh, and if you want to go all the way to pansy-ass Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, what's his name? Not Brian Greene, the other guy. Babyface. What? Carol. A perfect name. His name should be Carol Sean. 'Cause he's a faggot. Lies in his teeth. All right. So now I've gotten I could name 100 more people who are as evil or worse. The worst of them all, you want to know? Just look it up so you can see this guy and laugh. But be sure you're in a good mood watching this guy, because he's a motherfucker from hell. His name is Strauss. All right. So the proton is a sink, which means there must be an equal and opposite sink. This sink is the result of centripetal space force. But the electron does not manifest a field. Instead, the surface, which is a spherical object of energy, it actually has no interior. And that's quite a mind stretch. Not under my geometry, it's not a mind stretch. It's proved by the axiomatic basis of spherical number space. There has to be a hole at the center of spherical space. Otherwise, it's infinite. But you can finitize the universe by reciprocating the two infinities. One of the two infinities is at the center of the proton. The other infinity is shrunken down. It's shrunken down from the infinite edge of the universe to the surface of the electron. So the electron is a pure surface object that represents infinity. And the proton represents the reciprocal infinity. So you have two infinities in relationship in the atom. And the quantum of gravity is the proton. That's the quantum of gravity. And that is also magnetism. That is the origin of the phenomenon of magnetism. And that's the first time in the history of science or mankind that magnetism has ever been defined at all. Although you would have to say that James Clerk Maxwell showed the geometric relationship between the electric field and the magnetic field. That's highly artificial and no electrodynamicist understands it. I understand it. So that's the quantum of gravity. Now I want to show you why that solves all the cosmological spookiness. You've heard of the expanding universe. It's part of your brainwashing. You're just a N-word slave having been put through the United States prison scholastic system where you're forced to be a monkey and you're also exposed to the expanding universe, which is one of the most psychotic ideas ever formulated in the shit-ass sinful mind of man. No, the universe is not expanding. And only an idiot would say that. So, there you go. That's everybody. Only I am left out of that list. There is a short list of geniuses, equivalent geniuses. Halton Christian Arp, Sir Fred Hoyle. There are a few others, but none of them are alive. I'm the last. As far as I know. I pray that I'm not the last. Otherwise, I'm doomed. I will never be heard. Well, I'm sorry, but I will be heard. I'll stop at nothing. Short of breaking any of the laws of God or man, to be a top-notch genius in whatever field, you have to be absolutely moral. You know why? Otherwise, you'll be taken by Satan. And if you don't believe that, it's time for you to get back to the Quran or the Bible or the Dalai Lama. They're all the same. Except, of course, there is a hierarchy among wise men, or the human race is putrid. Well, I think you know who the master of the human race is. He had to leave. Imagine that. I wonder why. 'Cause they murdered him. And they'd murder him again if he came back. That's much higher than the Dalai Lama. It's much higher than Muhammad the Prophet. I am very favorably disposed towards Islam. Much more than I'm allowed to say in the United States. Because it's an Israeli province. And the Israelis are going to destroy Iran. You mark my words, that will mark the end of the world. As soon as Israel forces the United States to move directly against Iran, that's going to incite the apocalypse. And then all bets are off, and I'll just wave nighty-night to all you jackasses. But while I'm here, I am going to say the truth, not as I know it. The truth as the universe says it. So now you know what a black hole is, you know what the quantum of gravity is, and you know what quantum gravity is. So stay tuned. That's enough. That's 45 minutes. And it's about 5:30 a.m. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be right back.